I'd like you to welcome Leanne and Christie.
Thank you very much, and hello everybody. I've been practicing my opening hello all day, so hopefully that was... Like, do I say hello to you, or do I go good evening? But hello. This is the artist talk, obviously, for Even If I Wasn't Here, which is on show at the PoMo Arts Gallery until the 8th of July. And why do I state the obvious? Because we're actually here. The cameras over there are recording, so I just wanted you to be aware of it. You've got a camera recording and there's a live feed going out to Instagram as well, so just be aware that that is alive over there. That's the reason why I state that. So this evening what I thought I would do is take you through the logical process as to how this exhibition actually came about. So what I want us to do is to have a look at the umbrella idea, the overwhelming motivation for all of my studio work, and then kind of narrow that down until we get to the actual paintings that are on show in the exhibition. We'll do that and then we'll move into the exhibition itself. I know a lot of you have gone through the show. For those of you who haven't gone through the show, you can then take a little walk through. And then I'd very much like to know what you're thinking, answer some of your questions. If there's anything on Instagram as well that anybody wants to ask, my wife Sabrina is here and she can shout out the, questions. But we'll do that once we're in the gallery space, and I'm hoping that this chat will give you a little bit more of an understanding of the work and what my motivations were. And I'm hoping that you already get the show, but if not, this will hopefully make it a little clearer, and then you can guide me as to where I need to be changing things in order to communicate better with my viewer. So the best space to start is to have a look at the question of what is painting. Go back to art school 101. But realistically, when you start painting, you're given a box, and within that box there are these very definite rules that you are supposed to learn. The technical aspects of painting: perspective, color, relationships, composition, tonal value, drawing, all the technical aspects of what a painting is, and it's inside a box. And there's a yes or no answer to the questions that you're posed within that box. It's true or false. And you need to spend time spending in this box, because that's where you get to really test your mettle and to know when you've mastered the language. But the key part of being in that box is that what you're producing are these objects. Sorry, not that object. Objects on the wall. And those things are the things that we generally understand as paintings, and they're not paintings. Those objects on the wall are just simply a reflection of the technical rules. And the most important person in that object that sits on the wall is the painter, and that's not painting. What painting is when the person who's sitting inside the box starts becoming aware of the thing that's outside of the box, which is the viewer. And when you start becoming aware of the viewer, who is a human being just as you are as a painter, you start understanding how these technical things that you're learning inside the box can be used to communicate things to the viewer. Something like music, the actual instruments in a song is the thing that you start paying attention to. You move beyond the lyrics, which communicates with the viewer here, and you start understanding what makes the viewer tick over here. So you start thinking about things like the brushworks. How do I make my viewer move through my painting with brushwork? What kind of brushwork is sexy brushwork? What kind of brushwork excites the viewer? You think about the colors. How do I create color, not harmonies, not correct use of color, but how do I use color to excite an emotion or to communicate something deeper to my viewer? You think about perspective no longer as linear perspective where you've got vanishing points or you've got things in the distance that appear lighter than in the foreground. You're thinking about moving the viewer through the painting at the pace that you want them to move by giving them stepping stones, brushwork, moving them through with brushwork, slow brushwork, energetic brushwork, tapestry-like brushwork that keeps them in little intimate areas of the painting. You're thinking about leaving little color stepping stones, so they step on this color stone and then you give them another little stone over here, so your colors are bouncing them through the canvas. And so what you started doing with the painting is you start building relationships with the viewer. So a painting is not that thing that happens in the box where the artist, the painter, is a central person, the most important person in the relationship. A painting is when the viewer is the most important part of the relationship. And a painting is when you come up to this thing that sits on the wall and you don't see it. You don't think about it. That's a painting. Because when you stand in front of a painting that's actually a painting, a good painting, a painting that's been successful, is you're thinking about yourself. The painter painted you. And so you stand in front of the painting and you immediately start thinking what you had for dinner, what you're going to be going home to, what your life experiences are, what your emotional state is, what your memories are, how you're thinking about things in the world. It's a reflection of who you are. And the artist has done that by using those things they learned in the box, and then they started becoming aware of you, and they learned how to manipulate them, and now they're playing with the brushwork, the colors, the format of the painting, intimate paintings, small 10 by 10 paintings. You've seen some of those are automatically intimate. They ask you to be involved with them on a human level. The large format, you start thinking about the large format and what that does to you and the relationship it has with you. And even the surface of the canvas itself, you start thinking about. You'll notice in the exhibition, which we'll go through and have a look at later, but you'll notice that in some paintings, I have actually manipulated the surface of the canvas. So that is another part of the painting language that you become aware of when you become aware of the viewer, because you're thinking about humans and how they experience the world. And one of the reasons why I think a lot about the surface of the canvas is because, there's the Sarajevo roses in Sarajevo, and there are those, you know them? There are those I'm trying to find the right word and it's just not coming to me. But they're the scars. I guess scars is a good word to use. They're the scars in the surface of the roads of the city. And it's where the mortars hit. And it's in areas of the city in Sarajevo where more than 3 people died. And what they've done is memorials. There's over 200 of these memorials. And what they've done as a memorial is they've filled in those mortar scars in the city, and they've filled it in with resin. And so as you walk through the city, you actually see the surface of the city, which has something impacted on it, which tells a story. Less dramatic, but here in this part of the world, I'm always fascinated how in the winter, after the winter's come and gone, and we've had some strong snowstorms, how the surface of the street is scarred, and you've got your potholes. There's a story there. It tells you something about what happened. So you start becoming very aware of the viewer when you're actually thinking beyond that little box where you learn your technical skills, and that's when you start moving into a place where your primary motivation when you're in the studio and working with your paint is communicating with your viewer. It's developing that relationship with your painting so that painting successfully is able to create a relationship with the viewer, so the viewer does not see the painting. That is success. I had success once at the Harmony Arts Festival last year, actually, which was a really nice bit of a boost for this show. I had a piece in the studio. It was one of the larger pieces. It was 60 inches by 72 inches, and it came from my rezoning application series, and it's called Ode to Hendrix. And it looks at, the downtown in Chinatown, there's the Hendrix Shrine on the corner, well, it's now closed, but the Hendrix Shrine on the corner of East Georgia and Main Street, and that is undergoing redevelopment, that particular corner. So I was looking at that particular corner, and it was a painting that wasn't told from a single viewpoint. It was many viewpoints tied together, woven, a little bit of graffiti in it, which is unusual for me. And I was kind of going, it's the Harmony Arts Festival, it's West Vancouver, should I be a little bit more straight with what I'm doing? It's just a summer show, everybody's there to have fun. Should I take this particular piece down? It's not edgy, I don't consider myself an edgy painter, but it's maybe not as easy to consume as a single viewpoint painting. But anyway, I took it down and I put it into my booth, and it was the most fantastic experience because it was the very first time in my life that I experienced me as an artist being reduced to absolutely nothing. Nobody was interested in me. Nobody wanted to talk to me. My participation in the painting was zero. And it was such a fulfilling feeling because I'd moved from that space where I was living inside that box, where I was the most important part of the relationship, and I really needed people to come past and go, you did good. And I was moved successfully into that place where the painting had become invisible. People would walk into the booth, and they just started talking about their thoughts, their ideas, their jobs, how the urban development affects them, where they see the future of the city going. Somebody walked into the booth, they would start talking to each other, and I was just standing there. I'd be like, well, hey, I'm actually the artist. They'd be like, yeah, da-da-da-da-da, and they would carry on talking, which is so unusual and so lovely for me as an artist. So that is a successful painting. And they didn't look at that painting. they saw themselves, they saw their experiences, and they had a conversation that existed outside of me. So that is painting. So when I'm in the studio, and I've been in the studio now full-time 16 years, that is the only thing that I'm thinking about, is how do I better as a painter exploit my material so I learn how to use it to communicate to other human beings in the world. And then I'm also always looking for the opportunities to invite viewers into that relationship so they can understand the painting relationship a little bit more and appreciate the conversation that I'm trying to provoke with them. So when Janice and I started talking about this exhibition, that was the big umbrella that I always live under. This conversation I'm trying to have with you, the viewer, through the painting, so that my paintings become invisible and you really don't care about my existence. But one of the things is that I'm an urban oil painter. And I was just discussing that I am an oil painter. And it's a very interesting thing. The people often say to me, well, why are you so specific, urban oil painter? And the reason why I do that is because I am an oil painter. My medium, oils, they stay wet for a long period of time, long enough for me to really engage with them. And I find that they're the most human medium to really draw out the conversation and to explore what I want to explore. So there was one point where I went on a tangent and I was trying to put time into my paintings. And one of the ways that I was able to deal with putting time into the paintings was to scrape back the painting at various points along the process. And it was a scraping back to draw back into the painting, but it was also revealing layers which had existed and in my head were imbued with something of the life that existed previous to the moment that we were living in. So with oils, they're constantly interacting, they're constantly talking back to me, they're constantly making new suggestions that I can listen to, and that's why I say I'm an urban oil painter. But the other part of that is the urban. And it's a blessing and a curse. I was born a painter. That's as simple as it is. I wish I could actually claim being an artist. That would be a little bit more glamorous, but I'm a painter and I always have been. And part of being born a painter is that I've been designed to spend many hours in the studio alone. To be a good painter, to be a competent painter, you need to be spending 8-10 hours a day in the studio and really working to understand your medium and to go through the struggle with your medium. As a result of that, my human interactions are slightly lacking. I don't really spend a lot of time investing in friendships outside of the studio simply because they demand the energy and the time that the painting demands. So that's just a simple decision that I've made. But as a human being, it's really important for me to have these human relationships and to connect with the world. And I found that that is a very satisfying place to do that, is the urban environment. And when I'm in the urban environment, I feel connected, I feel in relationship with people in the city, and I spend all my time looking at how people are relating to themselves, how they're relating to other people, how they're relating to their environment, how the environment's relating to them, and how the changes in the environment is causing these relationships to change. And I'm always looking for the signals of that relationship and trying to understand what they mean. So again, I can better understand my viewer, but also feel connected to the people around me by understanding them on a different level because we don't have the interpersonal relationships. So during this process, Urban Oil Painter, what I've noticed is that as the urban environment, I'm just going to grab a sip of water, a little thirsty. So what I've noticed is as the urban environment changes, it impacts the way that we relate to ourselves, each other, and to the environment. And it shapes the way we think. And one of the things that I've noticed for myself, and I say for myself because when I come at this topic, it's such a huge topic, and I'm always very cautious. It's one of those spaces that I don't want to go lumbering into. I'm not an urban planner. I'm not an architect. I'm not a politician. I'm not a developer. I'm not an activist. I'm just simply Leanne, the urban oil painter, a human being wandering through the city and listening to how the city changes and listening to how our relationships change. So for myself as a painter, what I've noticed as the city starts changing is that there's various things within the landscape, sensory things, visual things, smells, sounds, that when you encounter them, they trigger off memories, small memories, simple memories, memories that are completely inconsequential, nothing at all important to do with your life. but they trigger these memories that in that brief moment you reflect back. And in that brief moment that you reflect back and you have that memory of a person or a space that you once existed in, you unpack that memory. And as you unpack that memory, it reinforces something of your identity. It reinforces something of your belonging. It reinforces something of your awareness with the world. And as you unpack it, you imbue it with a little bit more meaning. You pack it back up and you pop it back inside, and it becomes more important, more established, and you've reaffirmed your space in the world. And that happens as you walk through the urban environment. You have all these little triggers that all of a sudden you go, oh, I remember that time. Oh, I wonder what's happening with that person. Oh, I should definitely give that person a call. These little moments, these little fabrics that are connected to what I call anchors in the landscape. And what I've also noticed is that as you're moving through the landscape, you'll have these memories that you have, and you look in the landscape for the things that can confirm that your memories are true. That memory did actually happen because the space exists. You're standing in it. And so again, when you're unpacking and you're trying to consider who you are in the world and having that reaffirmation and rethinking about this memory, there is external confirmation to say, yes, you did have that memory. Yes, you are the person that you think you are, because this is part of your story. This is part of your narrative. These people are the important people in your life. And you pack that and you put it back and you're confirmed. But as the urban environment changes, those anchors change. Those anchors are removed. And as the urban environment changes, you go through spaces where you'll be, oh yeah, I remember da-da-da, and you'll look for the familiar thing that confirms that memory, and it doesn't exist anymore, which creates a sense of confusion and a lack of balance. And I mentioned this in my statement, which I'll read the statement that I had for this exhibition. But in 2013, there's another South African in the room, yay! But in 2013, just a little shout out. But in 2013, I went back to South Africa with Sabrina, and I hadn't been there for 10 years. And when I left South Africa, I actually left in 97 accidentally. I went on a 2-week holiday. This is me, still on holiday, because I forgot to go home. But I left accidentally, and as you know, South Africa went through quite a traumatic time, and it was just at the end of apartheid. So going back after 10 years of not having been there, 2013, you can do the maths, there's lots of things missing, my maths is not great, but it was 2013, and not only had the spaces that I once existed in changed culturally, but that also changed physically. And even my old home that I grew up in had changed. It had new owners. They'd done an addition. They'd done some changing of landscape. I think I recognized one tree. They'd painted it a different color. I went to the areas that I recognized. Some had gone through urban development. I went through other areas that I remember looking for myself, looking for my memories. And some of them were in decay. So the whole city had changed. Of course, the whole city had changed. But as I'm navigating through the city and showing my wife the spaces that I grew up in, I suddenly found myself confused because I had all these memories, but I had nothing physical to confirm these memories against. And then when I was walking through, I actually found that I wasn't even having triggers of those little inconsequential memories that are connected to the anchors in the environment. They stopped existing. They stopped coming to the forefront. And I actually found myself standing in a void, in a vacuum, and saying, oh my God, not only have I forgotten to remember, you don't know what you don't know. I can't remember what I don't remember. And I suddenly realized they were gone, those memories. But even more than that is I was standing in a situation where when I did have a memory of something, there was nothing to confirm it was true. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that? Are you lying to yourself? Is anything around you existing? Is it true? You lose your identity. And so when I came back to Vancouver, I was in a little bit of a state. And I realized that the change in the urban environment, what it does to us as human beings, is deeply impactful. And again, I'm just simply Leanne, I'm Christie, the urban oil painter, and I speak to you as an artist and how I understand the relationships that we have with each other and the relationships we have with the urban environment. But the changes in the urban environment, they create a feeling of anxiety within us. They take away something of our identity because we've got nothing to test our memories against. We lose those special spaces where those anchors are guarded within them, and when we walk through them, those memories that are tiny, inconsequential memories suddenly pop to the surface of our thoughts and then go back down. We lose that delight. We lose our neighborhoods. We lose the familiarity of the people that we're accustomed to. And there's a sense of anxiety, there's a sense of loss, there's a sense of confusion, there's a sense of emptiness. And maybe we don't necessarily put our fingers on it and say, it's that. It definitely impacts who we are as human beings and how we relate to each other and to the urban environment. And I think along with that, what often happens is that we then start getting precious and protective about the environment. This is ours. You can't change it. This is mine. It belongs to me. This is not right. I don't want the 60-story building. I don't want you to take that neighborhood down. I don't want you to change things. But on the other hand, we're going, but we need housing. We need places for people. We need to develop communities. This makes no sense to have these massive sprawling neighborhoods where people are living on the street. So you have this conflict, this constant turmoil as a human being in an urban environment that's changing. And on top of that turmoil, there's that sense of loss of identity, loss of community. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? And that was a question that I've been asking myself since 2013. Like, how do I communicate to the viewers through my painting? And how do I use the language in the painting? And what does the urban environment mean? And how do I connect with humans through the urban environment? So when they're doing this, what does this mean? And what do I do as a human being when I'm experiencing a loss of identity and so much conflict within myself? And then my beautiful wife, last year, she bought me a ski pass for Mount Seymour. So it was a spring ski pass for Mount Seymour. Being a South African, I just learned to ski. In fact, I think it was that Christmas where she had taken me up to Grouse and I put on one ski and then stood there crying, going, I can't do it. Because it just kept moving. But yeah, so I'd learned the basics of skiing. So she said, hey, Seymour's got this, happy birthday. You know, maybe a couple of hours, once a week, twice a week, pop up there, practice your skills while you can, and then at least we have this as another activity that we can do. Yeah, people were asking me at the Harmony Arts Festival where my cherry blossoms were, and I was like, where are my cherry blossoms? I don't think I did any cherry blossom paintings this year. And then suddenly I was like, of course, I got lost on the mountain. Just like I got lost on a holiday from South Africa, I got lost on the mountain. So I ended up spending, the spring ski pass is kind of like, March, April? Finished on the 9th of April. So I ended up getting lost on the mountain for about a month. There was a shuttle that went up. I always planned to go up in the shuttle, just a couple of hours, practice skiing, head off to the studio, easy bus route connection, and then come home. I just never went to the studio. I ended up on the mountain 5-6 hours a day, whether it was that glorious sunny weather and the mushy snow, or if there'd been new snow and the storm was raging, I was on the mountain. And sometimes I was on the mountain by myself. I remember clearly there was a moment in the ski lift. I'd been on the mountain for 6 hours. I was soaked all the way through on the ski lift, heading up to the dangerous mountaintop. And the wind was whipping at the ski lift, and it was just rocking backwards and forwards. And I was there by myself, and I was there pretty much 6 hours by myself, except for the ski patrol. And what happened during that process where I suddenly found myself doing this very monotonous thing throughout the day on the mountain, and there was just one thing that I needed to focus on during that course of the day, and that was to ski. Just to keep practicing skiing, my body, the feeling on the mountain, and just having that kind of meditative process on the mountain. I then started looking, and I noticed a crow landing on a branch, and it hit me. Even if I wasn't here, that crow would still land on that branch. And then I saw the snow falling, and I saw it hitting the ground. I went, even if I wasn't here, that snowflake would still fall and hit the ground. And you see the wind in the trees, and you go, even if I wasn't here, that wind would still whip up the leaves in the tree. And it became this very meditative process for me, spending all that time on the mountain talking back to me. And that became the thing, even if I wasn't here. And the more I repeated it, and the more I then started actually looking for the things that would be happening, even if I wasn't there, I suddenly was grounded. I was grounded in the universe. I was grounded in my place in the universe, my tiny little inconsequential place in this grand universe, in this massive life that we're all leading. And I realized that each of those things was happening in the moment. And as they were happening in the moment, the truth is that only the moment is what exists. And this thing about change, it's so silly. Because change is the only thing that's true about the universe. It's constantly changing. And there's not a single thing that you can do about it. That is the constant, is the change, is the constant. Even if I wasn't here, these things would still be happening. And in that, there's a great sense of peace. When you go, oh, when I step out into the world, it's okay that the world is changing. It's okay that things around me are moving forward. Because even if I wasn't here, they would still be happening. So then Janice and I were talking about the exhibition. And had the story of my communicating with the painting community. You were creating something that was invisible, where my role was completely inconsequential. And we're then having a look at how memory is affected when the anchors in the urban environment specifically are removed, and you don't have those little triggers to think about the inconsequential moments of life, and you also don't have those things to test your memories against to see if what you thought was true and who you are and the identity is true. And going through this lovely meditation, then 10 years later, after that experience in South Africa of going, even if I wasn't here, we then started having a conversation about this particular show. So when I came into the gallery, it was so obvious. Nothing else could be done except what I've done out there. Because when you walk into this environment, you automatically have a tiny corridor, a narrow space, feels like low ceilings, and as you walk down that corridor, what do you feel? You're in space that's cozy. It's human-sized. It feels good to walk down that corridor. There's nothing there to cause you any trouble. And so it made sense that when you're thinking about painting as a relationship, and you're thinking, oh, actually just backstep one thing. And one of the other things that had happened that is important to the show is that in the process of me feeling disconnected and having this meditative insight on Mount Seymour, I'd also done a pedestrian trip from my home at the Eagle Ridge Hospital to my studio in Chinatown. So that took about 4-5 hours. But in that process of walking that line from Coquitlam all the way through to Chinatown, you experience the different zones of the city, how things change. You're walking along the highway, and it's this crazy highway, very stimulating, very alienating. You feel very small and exposed. And then you start stepping into the neighborhood, but it's an industrial neighborhood, and you feel like you're walking through a secret part of the city that nobody else knows about because it's the naughty industrial side that you were never allowed to play in as a kid. And then you hit the little neighborhoods where you've got the coffee shops and the pet stores, and there's all people hanging out on the street, and there's the bus stop. And you know how it feels when you go through those different zones of the city. So I was very aware of the zones of the city and the experiences that you have. So that brings us back to this corridor. As you walk into that corridor, it was the perfect space to have a neighborhood. And you'll see when you go into the exhibition, that corridor is littered with 10 by 10 inch paintings. The idea behind that corridor was to put as many 10 inch by 10 inch paintings that I could possibly manage in it, or to create the neighborhood feeling, because the structure of the building lends itself to that neighborly zone. That feeling of belonging, that feeling of comfort, the feeling of identity. Every single painting in that corridor has got a subject which is easily recognizable. And the way I chose to complete those paintings, when I decided that those paintings were complete, is when the subject matter was easily recognizable, easy to identify with. And you'll notice in the paintings that all of them have some sense of light in it, but that light is an imaginary light. The light that I put into those paintings is one that I just make up, because I know that that light is pleasing to us as a viewer, because my job in the neighborhood was to please you, was to fill you with a sense of belonging, recognition, and understanding. So as you walk through that neighborhood, it's noisy. There's too many paintings in there. It's meant to be noisy. It's meant to feel like you're part of a community. You belong here. You recognize it. You'll notice the brushstrokes. The brushstrokes are tapestry-like. Nothing too crazy. Nothing to kick you in the face. The color choices, they work well with each other. They're quite soft. Some people often describe those paintings as a little pastel-y. They're soft and pleasing and engaging, and they want to have a relationship with you as a person on an intimate level. That's what those paintings are. And the space allows us to create a neighborhood. So you walk into that neighborhood, and it's wonderful. And then you step into the next zone, the next part of the gallery, which is a big square space. And as you step into that big square space, honestly, the first time I stepped into that big square space, I thought to myself, fuck, I screwed this up. There's not enough paintings in this room. It's very empty. It doesn't feel quite right. It feels like something's missing. And I was like, shit, I made a mistake. And then I said to myself, no, that's what you wanted, isn't it? That's what you wanted. You wanted the viewer to experience this human experience that we're having in the urban environment, where you go from that neighborhood, the familiarity, confirmation, this is who you are, you belong here, I recognize it, you're in control, and into a space where all of a sudden you're not in control. Something is missing, you forgot to remember. There was something that existed here yesterday, the bulldozers came in today, they chopped it down. Do you remember what it is? Can you describe it? Because I can never do that. I pay so much attention to the urban environment. But ask me to tell you, even when I know a building's going to go down, ask me to describe that building to you the day after it's gone down. I cannot. I've already forgotten to remember that building. And every memory that went with that building is already been erased. So when you step into that room, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted emptiness. I wanted confusion. I wanted a sense of what's going on here. And in that room, we decided to put 3 large paintings. And when you walk into that space, 3 large paintings, they're not the intimate little personal paintings anymore. They're 3 large paintings that, hey, look at me, I'm here. Don't turn away. I exist here. You will notice that I'm here with you. And because I'm a portrait format, remember how formats can really play into the relationship. Because I'm a portrait format, when you engage with me, what do I want from you? I want respect. And I want you to bow down at me. That's how I want you to look at me. Respect me and bow down at me. I'm a big painting. I belong in this room, and we will have an adult relationship with you, with each other, whether you want it or not. And you'll notice in those paintings, in addition to the specific choice of format, you've probably noticed this video on repeat over here. I actually paid attention. I was able to pay attention to the surface of the canvas. So with those paintings, I took the existing. There's 3 paintings. Some are projects that are nearing completion, in process, and the other one is in the near future. But I took the land map of what exists at present for that area, and I made a pattern. You can see in this video, I projected it onto the wall, I cut it, made little strips of paper, cut my canvas, sewed it together. So I essentially ended up making these canvases, which were made up of the property lines of the existing neighborhood. So what would happen in the final painting, and you'll notice it when you go through there, is that you can see those seams that come through in the final painting. And it was...
Sorry, I thought it was a molding.
Eh?
I thought it was a molding paint.
Yeah? Yeah.
I thought it was that, but then I looked at it.
Yeah. They're sewn. Exactly. So that on the surface of the canvas, the old neighborhood that once existed, it doesn't dominate the painting, it doesn't dominate the future, but there is still a whisper of the ghost of what used to be there that impacts it on the surface of the canvas. So in those paintings, you'll notice the surface of the canvas has actually been used to be part of the story. The format was chosen to be part of the story to communicate that feeling. That you'll see the brushwork. The brushwork is completely different in those paintings compared to what's happening in the little neighborhood. They're bigger, they're more vigorous. Some of them take you off the canvas, but they'll always allow you to come back in, but they force you to move through the painting. You'll see the color choices are a little bit more, they're not jarring. Again, I'm not an edgy painter, but the colors are a little bit more intense. There's different choices that were made in terms of the color. There's stronger reds, stronger blues. There's a bit of clashing that happens in the painting. And these paintings, there's no light that exists in these paintings at all. And the way I decided that these paintings, when they were complete, the line for them was simply to keep the viewer engaged. I don't care if you like them. I don't care if you don't like them. I hope you don't see them. I hope you don't think about me. I hope you think about you. But the point of these is that I want you just to stay engaged with the painting. And then so you're going through these zones of the city, and you're experiencing that human experience that we have when the environment's changing, community, neighborhood, confusion, loss of memory, loss of identity, that anxiety, the stress, what's happening, I need to stop it, I'm losing control, this is weird. And then the natural design of the gallery takes you into, I believe it's the old entrance. And in that old entrance, it's another corridor, but it's a little wider than the entrance corridor. And at the end of that corridor, you've got those beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows where you can see the little snippet of the mountain, and you can definitely see the sky. And as you step out into that corridor, there's those anchors that are existing in the environment, and specifically in our environment, which don't change, where they can calm you, they can slow you down, and just as they did to me on the mountain, they can bring you into that space of, even if I wasn't here, finish the sentence. It's okay that the urban environment changes. Nothing is ever meant to stay the same, and it's fine. And you'll notice in those paintings, what happens in those paintings, that they're large paintings once again. They could essentially have been smaller for that space, but they're large in order to encompass you when you're into that space. They want to embrace you when you're into that space. And see what I'm doing with my arms as I'm describing those paintings. It's an embracing sensation. So again, the format is a landscape format. So when you walk in there, they don't ask you to bow and to respect. They're asking to embrace you. And you'll see with the brushwork in there, yes, the brushwork isn't the brushwork of the neighborhood. It's larger brushes that for sure move their way through the canvas, but their intention is not to spin you through the canvas or to keep you moving through at a certain sense of energy. Their intention is to move you lyrically, languidly through the work. And again, recognizable subject matter, Bertflin Park and the Port Moody shoreline. And you'll see that the lighting that has been infused into those paintings is a more accurate, realistic lighting of, because in those paintings, I want you to get the feeling of being in the forest. It's not a painting of the forest. It's not a painting of the sea. It's the feeling of being alongside the sea and the feeling of being in the forest. And that calming and that anchoring that happens within you when you say to yourself, even if I wasn't here, the sun would still fall through the forest. So it was a perfect opportunity to go through all of those things, the big picture, thinking about, as a painter, the language, thinking about the struggle of being a human being in this urban environment, and then to be presented with such an amazing space. And that's why we designed the show in the way that we did. So before we move into having a look at the paintings, and I haven't necessarily gone into process because I wanted to share the story, a little bit of process, but as we move through and you have a look at the paintings, we can discuss a little bit more about the process and also have a look at any questions you may have. And if you think that I've been a complete fool, let me know. Because as I say, whether it makes sense or not, this is my lifelong ambition, is to figure out how to become the painter who disappears to create paintings that are invisible, and how to learn my language so that I can communicate things effectively. So if I'm a fool, let me know, because it will only help me along the journey. So I just wanted to read my artist statement for the show. It's a nice little summary, and then we'll move into the next room. So even if I wasn't here, the crow will land on the thin branch of the Douglas fir. My grandmother's bench is to be found behind Rocky Point Ice Cream, near the tree, by the public pool. It is here that we licked our ice cream, her double scoop bigger than the hand that held it. And it is here that she giggled sinfully, thinking about the amount of sweet cream that was about to slide down her throat. Now she waits in her bed with no memory of rummy, the game she taught me when I lost every single matchstick bet to her. She waits, and she pushes away the sweet, creamy chocolate pudding, smiling at me with the politeness of a stranger. Even if I wasn't here, the dog will sniff the sweet spots in the grass. The last time I visited my grandmother at her home in South Africa, I unknowingly floundered. The city shaped my soul, but was now changed beyond recognition. The new buildings, the new corners, new neighborhoods erased all anchors of self. Memories that relied on those anchors in the landscape to be ignited lay dormant in the darkened spaces of my mind. Unremarkable, simple moments that informed the sense of myself were lost even to themselves. Wayfinding ceased to be intuitive, and recollections that gallantly surfaced found themselves withering without the confirmation of the physical world to certify their authenticity before they were bundled away again. Even if I wasn't here, the leaf will still blow across the wet path. My grandmother's bench feels like it is permanent. It sits in a part of the city that feels protected from change. It seems like an anchor that I can rely on to ignite thoughts of my grandmother and to assure me of the truth of my identity. But as I move through the city, I see that it continues to evolve. I have no control. It is not mine. It is not dormant, and none of it will ever be faithful guardians of the anchors of my memories. Like my grandmother, I too will look upon the intimate with unfamiliar politeness as I forget to remember. Even if I wasn't here, the clouds will still gather on the mountains. They are not mine.